I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. Welcome to Chairwaves. My guest today is Rick Vanasse. He is a chair from the greater Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Annapolis, that whole area of the country. Rick is here to represent. Welcome.
Great to be here, Eric. Really look forward to talking to you.
We'll see if you still have that attitude when we're done. I'll appreciate that. You come to us with a variety of experience, and you've got a wide variety of groups. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about that makes your group special, we're gonna switch it up. A lot of times we start by talking about the chair, but in this case, I really wanted to hit on something about your groups, which is that you have a lot of folks who are third generation CEOs.
Yes.
Family businesses, as I'm sure you're aware, have a really special dynamic.
Yes.
And it appears that you have, whether by intention or not, crafted a niche for yourself in dealing with these issues. I would love to hear your perspective on multi-generational family business and what it's like working with those folks.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was not by design. And it just so happens that in the last 6 months, we've ended up with 5 people who are multi-generational. Of the 5, 4 are still in their 30s. So these are people who have been identified in the family to be the successor. In one case, the ownership is just transferred, and they are now the owner and CEO of a firm. I've got 2 this summer where the title is transferring, and 1 in the fall. So it's a very much of a planned event on the part of the families, and
like a bar mitzvah.
It's like a bar mitzvah.
Yeah. Now look, you're here.
Absolutely, and in all the cases, I had been in touch with someone else who knew of this transition that's going to occur, and that was how I got in touch with these people. And in another case, one of the cases, I have a member in one of my chief executive groups who is now part owner, but the founding family has assigned to them in their new role as COO to help develop their up-and-coming son, who will become president and then eventually CEO of the company. So it's all happened in interesting ways. I think the dynamic that's always there is the legacy issue, and can we move beyond what has been so wonderful and successful, and we cherish, and yet let's recognize that, let's celebrate that, and then let's move on. And that's not easy, and it's not typically a struggle for the new leader. It may be for the former leader, but oftentimes the biggest struggle is for the employees themselves. So I was at one of these facilities yesterday, and one of the employees has a special shelf with the recognition of this fellow's dad. They just renovated their office space, which is part of the transfer of old to new, and yet a lot of the people are struggling with letting go of what they've known for so many years or decades. And so we actually discussed, how do we celebrate what has been in order to move on to what will be.
What sorts of feelings do you find that the new generation has coming into it, and what are they dealing with emotionally as they're coming up on their bar mitzvah and they're about to be bestowed with this tremendous thing? What does that feel like?
Yeah, um, I think for many it's scary. It is. You're at, especially at that age, and if you're in your 30s and you're coming into a group like Vistage, where you're going to have people who've got far more experience as owner and CEO in the group, it can be intimidating. Um, but they all have an element of humility, which is key. They are there to learn. They know they're there to learn. They are really looking forward to stepping into the shoes of their grandfather or father or mother, and taking over what they created. All of them have a great desire to say, where can I take this? And so what's exciting for me working with the third generation is they all want to, they're all looking for what does that 10 years from now look like? What is that future state? And some of my other members, we have to push a bit. We have to push hard to get them to look at that future state and say, where am I going? Whereas these folks really want to go there, recognizing what has been, and really kind of learn the skills and tools to grow their business.
Well, unlike a lot of us, they grew up with
Exactly.
the idea that my time in the business comes to an end. Whereas for a lot of entrepreneurs and founder executives, I think that that's a hard thing to realize.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so one of the common conversations is, how do we help our my parent let go? And how do we make that ownership transfer? How do we make that authority transfer? And it's not easy. And it oftentimes involves conversations with that parent. I know with one, actually, I have a sixth member in this situation, and I've met multiple times with his dad, and he's in his mid to late 70s, and he just wants to know that somebody's keeping an eye, keeping his son in check, asking the tough questions, and having the conversations that I think for many years he was the one doing that, but has now stepped away and wants to make sure, because he recognizes the importance and value of those conversations, which is really what a Vistage peer group is all about. It's about having other CEOs, some of whom have a lot more experience, others may have less experience, but it's asking those tough questions, sharing that wisdom, holding you accountable to where you're trying to take your business, and that's the real value.
I'm curious, and if the plan hasn't been made yet, that's cool. How many of your third generation folks are thinking in terms of a fourth generation versus an exit by way of PE or something else?
Those four that are in their 30s, it's too early. They don't know. Their kids are younger. So they'll probably, in about 10 years, 15 years, they'll be faced with that decision. My members who are older than that, who are second and third generation, um, one did not really want to take the business and was looking at a different career, and then had the opportunity, and probably the final gauntlet was thrown, and they said, okay, yes, I want to come back, and has really enjoyed it and is doing a great job, but initially didn't want to do it. In both of their cases, they are asking the question, do I have someone, a child or a niece or nephew, who wants to take on the business? And oftentimes the answer is no. And so in that case, the question becomes, do I keep the ownership of the business and hire myself a CEO, or do I sell the business? And one of my other members, son, brilliant guy, PhD, said, Dad, I'm not interested in the business. And so he recently sold. So those become family conversations.
It's a super interesting dynamic, and it's very different than a lot of other businesses in the sense that, in a way, I mean, in my experience with family businesses, a lot of times it's actually a little bit more like a nonprofit because you've got sort of this board in the background
Right.
that you always have to make happy, even though those folks aren't actually working in the business day to day.
Um, yes. And one of the conversations we have, I've got two CEOs who are running businesses for large family offices. One's an $8.5 billion family office. The other's a $1.8 billion family office.
Wow, that's immense.
They're both immense, and in both cases, when they meet with the board, it's usually the hired CEO who's running the business, or the family office for them, maybe the CFO for the office, and whoever in the family is really kind of heading up the board, and what's really wonderful to see is usually the depth of knowledge that they have about the business,
Hmm.
understanding of the markets, and the patience to weather the storm, as opposed to, I think, oftentimes when you've got, and there's some private equity that's excellent, other private
Yes,
equity is questionable, and they're only interested in the short term returns, and the tolerance is month to month. And so there's a big difference in terms of how a family office, in my experience, the large family offices are running their businesses compared to, other particularly private equity. These others are family businesses. They're not as big as a family office, but
sure.
family business, and the same thing holds: appreciation for the business, tolerance for weathering the storm.
Let's talk about you. What's your deal? What's your background? How did you come up in the world?
Yeah, sure. So I'm really an organization design, organization development person, as well as the other side of that coin. I think it is a two-sided coin, and that's leadership development. And so my expertise has really been that of building high-performing organizations. I started doing that way back in the pulp and paper business 40 plus years ago, and was fortunate. I had an extraordinarily progressive CEO whose goal it was to be the best in the industry, high margin, highly profitable, and we achieved that. Um, but we were no longer the biggest, and size matters, and so we were acquired in a defensive move because they didn't want to see the new merger that we were about to accomplish to happen, and so that ended the party. And I then moved into consulting with a firm, Delta Consulting in New York, that was working with major corporations, mostly Fortune 500s, in their organization design development, a lot of CEO and C-suite work. So I learned of some incredible tools with them. Unfortunately, 9/11 occurred, and the consulting world blew up. And I was not a partner; only partners remained, and they helped us land with clients. And so I shifted from 20 years in manufacturing to healthcare, and I thought manufacturing was behind the times. We were comparing ourselves to Silicon Valley all the time.
Right.
And then I got into healthcare, and I said, "Oh my God! I mean, they're 30 years behind manufacturing." And so it was exciting in that I brought a lot to the party, a lot of the fundamentals in human resources and organization performance and organization design, moving from old-fashioned command and controlled siloed hierarchies to much more matrix kind of structures, even network structures. So as healthcare was transforming, it was a great time. Spent about 15 years doing that, and the midst of restructuring the company I was working for, Bon Secours Health System, I had a friend and mentor assisting us in that redesign. And halfway through, he says, "Isn't this fun?" I go, "Yeah." Well, let's start a little group and do this across healthcare. So we did. We started a consulting firm in Palo Alto and Spring Network, and we worked with major health systems for about 10 years. So we had quite a journey. I Towards the end of that, I spent 2 years fighting cancer. I had stage 4 lymphoma.
Oh my.
Came through that, and those are rather life changing events. And I then had to decide what I wanted to do in life. And a good buddy had become a Vistage chair, and
And then you said, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
yeah, I said I know what I want to do, and it's just been fabulous. It takes all my background of the organization and people side, which is typically the toughest issues my folks are dealing with, and being able to apply all of that.
No, I'd like to kind of pull out a couple of things from that big story you just told. I mean, number one, I need to know, as a veteran of the paper business, how accurate the great documentary "The Office" was in telling us what it was like.
we had we had we had a P&L that was the office, and we had we had an office in that town. What was the town?
Scranton.
Scranton. We had an office in Scranton, and I would have to say it was quite accurate.
On a more serious note, so you described moving from manufacturing based businesses into healthcare and realizing how behind they are. It's interesting when you realize that what a lot of businesses consider basic blocking and tackling are completely new and foreign concepts in different industries. I imagine that you see a lot of that within the room in your Vistage groups.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes it powerful. What makes Vistage different than most other peer groups is that we have non competitors. And so odds are there's no one else in the room in your industry. If they are, it's adjunct, a physician and a dentist, or,
Sure.
construction, but in two different areas or different GovCons. And it's really the power of the group. I encourage all my members, join a peer group in your industry. Know what your industry is doing. Know what the best practices are, and also recognize that you don't want to be a lemming. And so, how can we ensure that you're learning from other industries, including nonprofits? And it's been a great way to exchange different ways of thinking, getting out of the box. People who don't know your industry are going to ask questions that just seem simple and obvious to them that you never asked yourself, and so that's a big part of what we do.
Absolutely. How did your how has your experience as a cancer survivor informed now how you advise people and talk to people in this new stage in your career?
Yeah, yeah. In several ways. One is resilience, and so I think you find resilience and you find reserves you perhaps didn't know you had. And so being able to apply those and learn from that and be able to share some of that with others who are struggling. So resilience is one key area. I think, humility and realizing there's a bunch of stuff you just don't know and you have to let go and you have to rely on other people. And some of us have a hard time to let go of stuff. We want to control everything. And there are times when you can ask lots of questions, but at the end of the day, the physician's going to know what your chemo recipe should be. I'm not going to have a lot of input. And
Right.
and there are times when, as a business owner and leader, There's, whether it's how you structure the ownership of your company, to how you apply AI. There's stuff that you may not know as much as you think you do. And so, how do we get in front of them and help them see and understand and be open to a bigger, broader world? And so, I think
Sure.
those applied. And then the third area for me in terms of the cancer survival, when my folks are looking to retire or looking to sell their business. They're typically in their 50s or 60s, and my favorite question is, "That's great, that's awesome. Now what?" And I get this big-eyed blank stare. I have no idea. We've actually had people delay the sale of the business a year or two because they did not have an answer to that question, and it's frankly a very important question. It's going to shape how you decide to sell your business, how you're going to, whether it's internal or external. But the good news is I've been able to tap many of those people, and they are serving as mentors and senior advisors to our other members. So it's a win-win. They can tap the wisdom and experience of people who've been around the block, and those folks have purpose and meaning. So it's really the meaning making in life. It's doing something purposeful in life.
That's a wonderful perspective, by the way. Now you have a number of groups. You've got two CE groups. You've got a key group, advancing leaders, emerging leaders, and a trusted advisors group. And so you're getting basically within your little ecosystem kind of a cross section of all the types of people that come to Vistage.
Yes.
What is in your opinion, what are the things that are universal themes no matter who you're dealing with, and which things that folks talk about in these groups? What are the themes that change as you go from one group to another?
Yeah, great question. So from
They're all great questions,
Yeah,
by the
they
way.
are. It's brilliant. So from emerging leaders to advancing leaders to key executives to chief executives, in all of those cases, I mean, we kid about it, but it's true. If you've got people, you've got problems, and
Oh my God, yes.
and so at every level of every organization, it is growth around how to work with and deal with other people. And the folks early on in their career, it's about how to influence, how to manage up. People in more senior roles who've been around for a while, it's how to stop talking and listen and hear the people and actually reflect back what you're hearing. And then allow folks' voice to be heard and let that influence the direction of your company. And ultimately, you'll have the final say. But really, hearing people out is so important. One of our speakers, who has expertise, he's a researcher in Gen Z and millennials, and he came in the room and he said, "Okay, how many of you think none of these young generations want to be accountable?" Of course, everyone's hand went up, even the 40-year-olds' hand went up, right? And and he said, "Well, I got some news for you. You're wrong. They do want to be held accountable, but there's now a quid pro quo that didn't exist for the boomers, and that is they want to be heard, and they want to know that they're being developed, that there's growth and development opportunities." And unanimously, everyone went around the table and was, "Oh, that's fair. That's cool. I can do that." And so that is a key difference. People of my generation, you didn't ask a lot of questions.
Well,
You just kind
no, it was because I said so.
of, oh,
And you do what you're told. You follow orders. And I mean, and to be fair,
yeah,
on the flip side of that, in the boomer generation and in the couple generations before, it was expected that your company was going to take care of you to an extent.
absolutely.
People would retire with pensions. People would get gold watches.
Right.
Doesn't happen anymore.
I happen to know the CEO of the paper company I worked from early on. I knew him in grad school, and I remember having the conversation. I said, "Well, I probably want to get an MBA." He said, "Oh, you don't need. Don't waste your time." He said, We're going to teach you what you need to know."
Yeah,
And they did. We had a corporate university with the best professors from all the Ivy League schools, and it was beyond an MBA program. But you didn't. There was a relationship and a covenant between employees and corporations that really doesn't exist today, and
right.
and so people are looking for it. And if you're not providing it, that's okay. I'll move on.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's a big difference. Back to your other question in terms of the difference between the groups. So the commonality is there's people. There's people at every level. It's understanding. It's the maturity level of people. How mature is their EQ? Not worried about IQ isn't usually the issue. It's EQ. And how mature are they? And then how are they exercising who they are? Who are they? And then how are they exercising who they are in their leadership? And that evolves and grows over time. I think one of the key differences between the groups is at the chief executive group, we're really working hard to get them out of the day to day. How do I spend less time in the business so I can spend more time on the business? That is a real live slogan. And we work hard as chairs and executive coaches to be pushing them. Why are you doing that? Why are you not delegating that? And
right.
it is the glass ceiling to growth when the CEO is caught up in day to day stuff that someone else could be doing. Oh, by the way, they can probably do it better than you if you hire the right person. And so go find someone better than you and give that job to them. And then you worry about the next P&L or the next innovation or the next investor that you need to be working with. That's very much at play with the chief executives. The key folks, they're wanting to be there. They're learning strategy. They're participating in strategy. But they are really also responsible for execution. They're the ones who got to get it done. And then we get down to AL and EL, and they're learning what does it mean to delegate, what does it mean to supervise,
Right.
to lead.
What do you think? What do you think that your members, if we were to, if they were in the room right now, and well, there'd be a lot of people, but if they were in the room right now, what would they say about you? What do you think that your members would say about their experience with you?
Yeah. Well, I work hard to get to know them. So I work hard to build a relationship with them and really understand what they know and what their experience is. In other words, what they can do, but who they are, and that's the real work behind the executive coaching portion of this. Um, I spend a lot of time pushing them. If I'm, as some would say, the job's to be a PETA. So if I'm not being a pain in the ass to these folks, I'm not doing my job. And so it's asking the question no one else is going to ask. It's giving them a nudge around. You told me, 6 months ago you wanted to do this. Why haven't you done it yet? And it's their agenda, but it is to help them be accountable to what it is they want to do. And frankly, I need that. I got my mentors. I got my people holding me accountable. And so that's a big part of what I'm doing. I'm asking the tough questions. I'm being the nudge. I'm also, I spend a lot of time exploring aspirations. Where do you want to go? Where can you go? And then we talk about what are the steps to get there. So it's a lot of looking out and then saying, what's the reality to get there? And one little habit I happen to have, and people told me this over the years, and I guess it's true. My DNA is I network people. And so no matter who I'm talking to or what conversation I'm having, I've got three other people in mind that they should be talking with. And it may go nowhere, but I have found I learn tremendous amounts from other people and their experiences. And so I try to plug my folks into others who they can also learn from.
Well, Rick, it's been wonderful talking with you. If folks have questions about your groups, about how they can effectively pay you to be a pain in their ass,
Yeah,
if they want to, know how to look death in the eye and say, heck no, I'm going to Vistage.
you're right.
Um, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Email's great. rick.vanasse@vistashare.com. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, and we'll get any LinkedIn messages as well.
Well, thank you for being a wonderful guest. It's really been great talking with you.
Enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.